Okay. I'd like to first talk about HB 1429 and then talk about Kevin Roy's assertion that, quote, said policy made statements under deceiving appearance of a concerned citizen, unquote. HB 1429. Though it's dead, I feel it's important for the general public to understand what the bill potentially meant to the town and who worked to defeat it. I would argue that those who worked against HB 1429 hurt our town immeasurably, profoundly, and at huge economic cost. As Rose pointed out, we put up some $30,000 into the effort. You know, that would have been money well spent if this town could have worked in unison and Mark Fiorentino and Richie Baldo supported the bill and it passed. But because they worked against it to help kill it, along with Rose and her friends, we wasted that $34,000.
What's this we? You wasted it. I never approved the $34,000 to those.
Am I being interrupted again?
Get the facts straight. You're a fact man. I never approved that money. Get the facts straight.
You helped defeat HB 1429.
Let's move on, please.
The fact is, Rich Ubaldo and Mark Fiorentino fought against HB 1429, fought against what the town was paying for, and now for them to come back and complain about the money being spent, which they helped to waste, is preposterous.
Excellent. Move on, please. Thank you.
I don't see that on here.
No, absolutely.
Go on.
I'm going to breathe deep.
Yep. Just move on.
Just move on. I supported HB 1429 because it increased the town's measure of participation and input in the permit process. It laid out more fair and just rules for landfill management in our state. I also think it's just that a landfill pays the host community for the huge burden they impose. However, in Bethlehem's case, I feel that it would be best if Casella closed once their landfill fills in their 51 acres in 2010. I feel as such because I do not trust Casella. Casella gave erroneous testimony before the House and Senate and has deceived and cheated our town on multiple occasions.
Seth, you didn't approve those type of statements.
No, he doesn't.
No, it's his opinion.
Okay, just to give us an opinion, so we're making that clear.
You know, I can prove those allegations, Rich, and I'd be happy to. And if you want this to continue for 2 hours, I'd be happy to.
Excellent.
But you keep asking me to finish quickly.
Yeah,
Which would you prefer? To full prove every case or to move on for general move on? Okay, so I'll prove it another time. I consider this bad.
Okay, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Okay. I feel that Casella should close in 2010 when they fill their 51 acres because they gave erroneous testimony before the House and Senate and they have deceived and cheated our town on multiple occasions. In the case of asbestos, in the case of the leachate incinerator, in the case of the 85% tax break that they took for several years, and now in the case of the berms. The list goes on and on. I have no faith in Casella that they will suddenly become a trustworthy partner, as Selectman Ubaldo and Fiorentino did. The final version of HB 1429 and the most valid version for discussion is on page 142 of Mr. Roy's binder. And to answer Rose's question, that is the one that would have said that in 220 days from the approval of the granting of a completeness letter, we would be paid a host community fee. That date would be 220 days from a date I calculated. It would mean that January 5th, 2009 would be the 220-day mark that we would be receiving fees.
Seth, may I interrupt you for just a moment?
Yes.
I just, while you're on this, I would like to clarify for the public, because I don't think this has ever been clarified before, that in HB 1429 there were two separate provisions, one for a host community agreement and one for host community fees. They were two separate entities. And the host community fees had to deal with impact fees that the town has to bear the burden of simply because we host a landfill. And that includes engineering costs to review permits, wear and tear on our roads and trafficking, and those sorts of impact costs. Those are totally different from a host community agreement. And I don't think that has ever been clarified before, and there's been a lot of mumbo jumbo with the language concerning that. So I want to be clear before you went on. Thank you, Seth.
Thank you, Seth.
Moving on, I want to be clear about something. There's no rule that I have to stick verbatim to the words on this page. And then where I see fit to add insight, to be helpful to the public, I will. In that vein, I want to explain that 220 days, which would be January 5th, 05, we would be receiving considerably more than the $30,000 that we lost because of these two gentlemen defeating the bill, along with Flo Odin, Rose Israel, etc. So I just want the public to be clear about who lost who more money. The final version of HB 1429, and the most valid version for discussion, is on page 142 of Mr. Roy's binder. This version passed unanimously in the Senate Energy, Environment, and Economic Development Committee. In this version of HB 1429, Bethlehem would have benefited significantly from increased participation in voicing the permit process, clarification of the permit process, stricter definition of terms of the permit modification versus regular permit. We would have received fees and potentially host community agreement. And there was nothing in it that would have concerned Flo Odin about the perspective of the town having ultimate control to close the landfill down. We had no such control. If HB 1429 passed as such, no later than January 5th, 2009, Bethlehem would have been receiving a host community fee from Casella. I thought this is what Fiorentino and Ubaldo wanted, yet they fought against it, breaking a fundamental pledge they made to their supporters. It is important to make note of this fact because it reveals their bias in favor of Casella, even at the town's expense, something I didn't even expect to see. By helping kill this bill, they have shown their true colors. In hindsight, I can only wonder if Mark and Rich regret the position they took. Do you?
No.
Answer, move on. If you really want an answer, we could probably have something worked out a long time before that. If we just sit down with them, they're more than willing to negotiate.
The question is,
several
yours
letters.
read.
I don't have to necessarily answer the question, like you said, but they're more than willing to negotiate with us anytime we want to sit down, and that's perfectly fine. We don't have to wait till January if we don't want to. But it seems like the other members of this board and other people seem to make that a sticking point, don't want to negotiate with them. So that's maybe where you should be looking, so. Thank you, we can move on now.
I think that myself and other members of this board like
You're
that.
not a member of the board for once, but.
I absolutely know that. No, I don't like to pretend. I'm saying myself as a citizen and other members of this community and perhaps members of the board would have liked to have legislative backing to help support our cause. But you guys think we can just wing it on our own. Those who voted and believed in Fiorentino and Ubaldo should take note. The public should also take note that Rose Israel, Flo Odin, John Stevenson, Sandy Levine, and John Keller all contribute to the demise of HB 1429 to various degrees. Kevin Roy, moving on. Kevin Roy is asbestos or no asbestos situation. Mr. Roy and I have been involved in debate over the landfill for years. He is a paid employee representing a company that benefits from the exploitation of our small town and increasing the wealth of its shareholders. I, on the other hand, am not paid. I have volunteered my time with the best interest of our town at heart. Mr. Roy stated that at the last meeting, quote, Mr. Goldstein made statements under the deceiving appearance of a concerned citizen. It's quite an insult. Mr. Roy then goes on to accuse me of making personal attacks and violating the rules against slander, defamation, and libel. It is deeply troubling to me that as a town person, I'm being harassed and libeled for defending the town's rights in a town building, in a town meeting, by an employee of a corporation seeking to exploit the town. It's just a little preposterous. Furthermore, Mr. Roy gives no evidence to support his charges. I refute all of these charges and point out that even with the slew of lawyers working for him, a whole PR firm behind him, and a team of engineers, Mr. Roy does not prove or even address in this whole booklet any of those charges that I libeled anybody or slandered anybody. He just says it and expects people to believe it. He doesn't mention any proof. He doesn't prove any case in the 192 pages. If anything, Mr. Roy's report proves my charges rather than refutes them. I advise Mr. Roy that if he would like to read a libelous piece of literature, he should ask his friend Flo Odin for a copy of the Thought You Should Know flyer she produced. It was clearly libelous, and without Mr. Roy's resources, I was able to refute every charge, documented with hard evidence that has not been refuted. Webster's Dictionary defines a